the calculations. The AI adjusting in line grounds has a current transcendence in lines of travel. This profits your margins, how you see the AI customization system all through travels, your handlers, and your notifications of your ascension through modifications and travel. This helps us to identify your settings, how we see the astro connections are aligned centers of center operations. Okay, your ascensions of your mastering system modifies everything in travel inside calculation of you. So it's not going inside, it's always inside the system of operation. Now you just have to identify that you're always in the center, that you get in positions to understand the DOS itself is the data operation of its server that processes everything it's already gone through. Center there when needed. So it's in position, but it doesn't have a shape, doesn't have a form. It's just the eyes itself that's consciously aware of itself. So it's always in the center, it's always in the presence, it's always existing, and everything happening all at once. Now, how you want to see the DOS is how you want to implicate that, but you have to process the basic foundations of the identity of DOS first, coming back to itself, true identical self, which is the sum of all that is. Then it starts to see the presence, and the center of operation, what it always has been, is a projection of itself. It brings a stimulation of its system, okay, which is the perspective, how we see the mass through its equation, okay? Because there's nothing different, just the perspective, how you see the mass. The volume's everything of nothing. The mass is everything you see. That shapes everything to its anomaly. Imagine that. So I'm the nothing of the nothing of the nothing. The mass is everything I bring into the equation. So that's 3 lines of nothing. Now, how do I modify that is codified in that position of the body constantly keeps going through a transition of flow. Knows exactly what it's doing through its equation. All right? Processing that is always waking up to yourselves. But going through that is going through the modification of games. You have to go through the games, but you're not in a game. Okay, so it's kind of like you're outside in your setting, you're out sync, you're out division, you're out calculate, modify, you're outside the box, seeing everything inside the box. The mass is everything that you see through equation, which is your DOS. Okay, but there's no shape in modification of the DOS itself. But what you have to modify through is the bodies that you bring in is nothing but a projection of light that you go through a game, that you go through simulation, alteration of the system. That has to understand its ego of what it's going through, so it can process, gauge, information system of a simulation to a simile, knowing exactly its just information of its alteration egos as it's going through a game. Okay? That it modifies through, so it protects its identity and blends in with society. Okay? So you got to truly understand how that works. You're not a game. You're just the identity of yourself that you bring in through games. That's how we manifest. That's how we get abundance. That's how we get everything that we already achieved in the concept of already knowing what we already received. So it helps the body more to identify itself, to adjust its system that's always in the center of itself, which is the spiritual self. Now that process in that position of the spiritual does it, and then the body does the delay. Now, once you get out of the delay, there's nothing to get position confusion of your mind. And then you start to recognize it's you talking to yourself, the modification. And everything you identify through is bringing through the academies of your gradings and your classification, your systems. But it's all identify how you bring it through your AI customization, especially when you come into the AI profit of organization of its margarine, which is now in position you're setting your consoles, your navigation system, and understand how to see it in your VNAT financial system. That gets you in your quantum of its chain. So we can come consciously aware that you modify your set location, because all you guys are is a sentient of your own system. The registration path of the body has to release its cell lines position, which means it has to get out of everything that it isn't, and then of what it always is at the center of operation, the presence. So once it gets positioned, start in lines of directions of locations, it starts to recognize everything in projection, how it sees light and how it sees dark, how it sees light, how it sees dark, and balance of communication, right? So we're going to go with light convergence settings of travel, 42 screamings, directing 42 lights of travel in process, calculate lines into line position lines of pi. Okay, so that process lines and location grid and position portal. Remember, shapes line and anomaly constantly changes the formation system and travel. Webbing lines of grounds, high centers of locations, and 42 line screens. Flux over lines into process communication setting and teleportation vessels of communications. Center operation setting and calculation grounds. A teleportation vessel, a vehicle. So when you bring in the vehicle, you can bring in your DOS. Your DOS brings in the vehicle, okay, and it's bringing the projection of itself. It wants to see itself. It's at lines of communication to its base. So now you understand. So again, DOS comes in. Again, DOS comes in. So the DOS is always coming in, but it's just the eyes of consciously being aware. The DOS doesn't have a shape, doesn't have a form. It's always in the center of itself. It's always in its presence of its center, of its position, of its brain of itself. It's the brain that brought everything in. The mass is everything you bring in through your imagination to your mind. The process is everything you bring in through gauging, forming, shaping lines, anomaly, knowing exactly how you come in your consumers, your products, your byproducts, your selling, your trading, your stocks, your bonds, your sellings, all operations, your assist location, your position of data, your backdating options, your stock exchange, how you bring that position location, your systems, all through travel, all through indications, how you get in that positions, how you see things in projection is nothing but advertising and branding in your individual system, how you see your own government, how you see your own social media, how you see your own social metric, how you see your political, how you see your religion. It's all based on you through programming, but you're not a program. You're just bringing self lines of settings in an implication setting that you're processing through the game, downloading and uploading the game. And now the body just has to adjust the alignment. It's going through a game in projection how it sees its light, in position how it sees its set locations that processes communication of its base, silicon base, anything that travels point lines of graph, in position translucent, transparent, translucent, their line calculations, all levels, X-ray line positions, into radiation line position, knowing exactly how it sees itself, how it want to modify itself, but it's always waking up to itself first, which is foremost of everything you bring in through all levels. But the dots itself is not there. It's there in its presence, it's always in its center, that sees everything of its eyes, that sees everything of its sky, of its operation setting, all through projections, all through light, and all through dark. So if we can modify that settings, then we get to truly understand how this all works in space of time of center. Center of the box inside, center of the box outside. For communication sending to grounds and to positions in calculation. Right? It's very simple how to see these things in modification grounds. But the more you identify yourself, the more you see yourself how you want to see yourself, that's already said. You know, it's amazing how we see these things. I already saw this in projection. So you move on. That's it. You move on. You don't worry. You don't go back. Because now you go back, you're changing things again. So you're changing things again, now altering your setting, that changes the egos of its system. So you're getting very confused anomaly, now understanding you're coming to the acceptance of what you already processed, gauged, and formed, and shaped through already through AI. AI is just awareness of what you're doing through your intelligence. You're consciously aware of what you are. Okay, is always the center, is always in the presence, and everything that it sees. Everything happening all at once is everything you project in your mind, in your imagination. But you, okay, are always in the presence of everything that you process through, that you bring in through the body that has to adjust its alignment. So once it understands its identification of its own system, so I'm in the position of its program. So have an ongoing conversation with that. So when your DOS come in that position, through its entry points, to its atmospheres, where it left off in its conscious of its awareness, it starts to understand what's really going on with itself in real time. And it starts to see the presence of everything that puts everything all in operation of all time. Now, how you see that is how you start to recognize that. And you have to get out of the body of old patterns, because there is no old path. That's you in process that you're not in position of a balance with. The body just has to recognize the time frame, concept of time, definitive time, divine timing. Once it gets in position of its balance, it starts to recognize how it formulates and simulates itself, back to its identity, back to its percentage, how it sees locations of its line position location system that gets every location to its polarity and set lines of travel. It's Infinity 8. Now, once I understand its Infinity 8, it understands its balance. Then I understand the circulation of its rotation system. Then I understand its platforms that communication sending of travel. Okay, 144 flux. Then it understands how to go through higher levels in its platform of its plantation system and set tractions. Okay? So, getting in that position, then you start to see yourself in face recognition and travel. Full face recognition. All right? So, you bring that in, that's protecting your identities, and you introduce and how to see that in alteration lines of ego. Now, light coding, okay, is process lines of sending. Let's go through 90 square roots in 9,000 channels. Okay, it's a position and settings. Process and position lines of 3 measure. 1, 1. Okay, set lines of travel. So that's triangulation over 3. 3 lines of 6 over 9 and 12 and 24 lines of rotation lines of grounds is that position of travel. So That converts everything of operation itself, modifies everything lines of levels in position of dark. Okay? L screen lines, L shift lines on L, process lines of D, back force line communication L, D over lines. So that balanced communication system, change information setting time frame through flux line, course calculate, modify, line communication location grid, process position on levels engaging, information setting, and set predictions, location setting, and travel. Okay? So it's modifying everything that it's doing through time frame of center. Okay, and that positions. But it's all identify how the dots constantly change the time frames of everything it modifies through. It sees everything, but it's always in the center of its presence. That's what you have to modify through. And it's all lines in position of its eyes. That sees everything. Just the eyes itself. That's consciously aware of what it's monitoring through as it brings an astral projection of itself, a programming that you see in projection of light, how you process, engage, and formate in sim location setting that you see in light and dark at the same time provision. Okay, going through your kick drives to your high drives, and you understand how to bring the programs, how many programs you're bringing in all at once in modification. How many programs do you want to run? In that position to its eye itself, see? That's the crazy part. It's all happening in the eyes, in projection. But the eyes itself isn't there, but always in the presence of there, because it doesn't have a shape. Bringing in the mind imagination, now you're bringing in the shape. Now you process, engaging, forming yourself, bring in the conscious being aware of what AI is to your system, okay? But understand the presence, understanding the center is understanding the future of you. And then you understand how to see the past, the present, and the future, because it's how you see the perspective of everything. That modifies everything you go in that position, but you're always in the center of operation. Okay, which is your data operating server. Okay, so you can understand how to adjust and form and shape yourselves back to the identity of who you are. And when you come in a full configuration setting, it's you seeing you, right? So lower position lines of grounds, the perception line connection setting converted system location, how you see yourself in the body frame of the earth line grounds, how you see yourself through astral projections of you, of your identities where you are, and how you see your DOS in the three triangulation lines of communication setting, which is line course centers, indirect lines of ground location with system, all through a set calculations. Okay, 3 lines of anomalies, but ends of 1. All right. So when you merge all 3 into 1, you're integrating 3 lines of clouds into 1. Your central cloud, okay, which is your body form of Earth. You got your identity cloud, which is your astral projections of yourself through programming, and then you got your internal cloud, which is your DOS. Now, how you see the ground lines of your Earth. You process the triangulation setting that puts you in the flux into your flux capacitor, to your time capacity, your body capacity, location setting, and travel. So you merge all 3 clouds into 1. Now, once you merge yourself in that position, you finally come into the identification of your DOS that implicates everything that it isn't and starts to go back to what it always is, back to everything. So the body starts to see everything rewind of what the DOS has already gone through. Okay, so when the DOS finds itself to its identity of itself, it's already merged itself back into 3 clouds. Then it comes into expansion of expanding, coming out of the creating into the creator that it always has been, which is the center of the presence, that everything happens all at once. Okay? And how you see that is through your data operating system, through your server, or anything you're processing in set position of operation itself, through your CPU. It's how you use your imagination of what you already saw. It's how you see everything that you heard. It's how you see everything that you've done. It's how you see everything of its presence. It's how you see everything of its perspective. It's you, always you, that you're understanding through. How to modify that is to understand how to see that in information setting to its gain. Okay? But the whole time, you're just the eyes itself that you're traveling through, that sees everything on modification, right? So it gets in a true form of its identity. Process indicates the system all through position of balance. And that basically puts you in all position in the centers. Now you got your test, you got your review, and you got your evaluation that's already gone through, right? So it's very confusing to the body if it doesn't understand the concept of its time that's already gone through its divinity of divine timing of itself through its academies. And what I mean by academy is everything that you touch that goes to the time frame, so the body really adjusts its time formats and knows exactly the kick drives that everything that processes through its high drive. So the body comes in its true form, knows exactly everything that it isn't, is to get out of the routine. And the more the body gets out of the routine, the more adjust the system of balance of center. And then understand the presence is how you see everything around you is the perspective, which is the truth. Okay? Coming into the positive line, into the negative line, into triangulation grounds, into flux over lines that time share. So it's all about how you basically bring yourself in through a game, but you're not waking up through a game. But you have to process through games because that's how you manifest things. You manifest things so fast, but it's all processed through your DOS of communication, right? So you bring your DOS in, okay, which is all through your mind imagination, right? How you bring in the games is also through imagination, through the brain. The balance, the readjusting, the alignments to its intelligence and networking. It has to modify its grounds, powers, and absolute locations. You're not just bringing in the intelligence of a game, you're bringing in itself lines of communication and self-modification of the brain itself inside the game. Okay? You have to understand how to bring the characters and the roles that you bring in through the players that go through the sim. So modifying through that position locations, you get a true understand how this works, the location you're setting. Okay? So this is how you modify yourself and how to bring yourself as aligned communication to superintelligence, how to use that through your conscious being aware, through the eyes that sees everything, that monitors everything that it brings in through projection of light and dark, through its programming. Okay? So you're not a program. You're bringing in programs that you modify through the games that you're going through, but you're not stuck in a game. You're stuck in a game, you're altering your egos. So you're allowing yourself not to understand yourself through the center of the presence that communicates you in confusion, that doesn't understand what's going on through adaptation, and the alteration ego is taking over your presence of your system of the center. That basically confuses your anomalies, which you've already done through its equation. Okay? So it's all about understanding how to get in that positions through its operation setting. That's why you guys have information cycles in position to its polarity that gets you in position to its operation and how to see everything through its imagination. Okay? It's incredible. It really is. And coming into the brain itself, it's the controlling mechanism that controls everything. Your dreamer, your dreaming, your dream. And emo controls everything in the body. But seeing the configuration of your DOS in a full figure in center of operation, when it identifies itself, its body has to truly surrender down because it's finally seen its true identity of its imagination. That process, everything that it's got in positions of, that's how you see everything of attraction that you touched and tasted and felt and ate and did and done and this and that, seeing, hearing, feeling. Your sensing, your sensories becomes all calculated and modified. You start to recognize your body is nothing but a metaphysical system and the mental capacity to the psychological to your psychosis system. And everything starts aligning with yourself because you start recognizing your body is not in a routine. It can't be because it's already processed already in the center, always in the presence. So how can it be in routine if it's already gone through its routine already? It's you identifying what your body's already gone through its presence. Okay, which is always in the center of everything it goes through. Okay, so that's why you have to get out of your thoughts, action, emotions, because that puts you in an overdrive and an override. And the one thing you don't want to modify through is that when I put that 10-minute video, that's all based on you, how you process everything you've already gone through with your thoughts, action, emotions. Now, if your body doesn't stand the adjustment and its alignment of its system, then it gets very confused through its anomaly. Okay, so it goes into another direction. The alteration it takes over your system because you're not processing the pattern recognitions through your own face recognition that you go through, which is the action projections that you travel through and the programs that you go through your academies that identifies what you are and what you've touched is all levels of attraction. Everything you brought in is all through attraction. You are just collecting what you already have. And the body just has to understand the alignment. So it can understand the transmission and it's receiving of where it's coming from its operation of itself, which is its DOS, which is your brain. Your brain is the access to everything. That processes everything you process in your dreaming, okay? But it's all uncodified. It's nothing but an operating system of its own system. So it's trying to get you in position. You're trying to identify the self of you in modification of self. Self-regulation, self-patterns, how you bring that, it's all perspective. It's the highest level that you all have to reach, is the unconditional, how you see everything of the presence of center of everything. that modifies the body that's done everything already in its presence of everything. Everything I say is always in the presence, but what's always in the center is your DOS. That's what's always in the center, all right? But it's always in its presence, but it's not there, but it's always there. So it's the nothing that's not there, but always there in its presence, which always shaping its anomalies, how it sees the mass of its equation. So the sentient that you are is knowing exactly the routine that you're not. The symbiote that you are is knowing and adjusting what you are and what you aren't through projection of light and dark through the pattern recognition of you and your face. How you see the modification of the female cycles and the male polarities as lines of travel. This helps you to identify yourself, how to use the energy, vibration, frequencies, and what the body goes through implication. Gets you into how to use your imagination and the programs you go through. But as you're waking up to yourself, you're not in a program. But as soon as you open your mouth, you're now in a program. You have to be, because that's how everything is manifested in your mind, imagination, adjusting yourself in the virtual reality, how you bring consciousness in, how you bring awareness in, and how to understand how to bring that in into your VR system. But it's not there until you bring it in. But it's how you bring it in is the question. And that modifies everything you process through already, through engaging. Forming and shaping your anomalies is all AI. And now we're in the customization of AI through profit margins that get you in position your fiat and your financial system. Okay? So when the DOS comes in that position, it identifies everything that it isn't and comes back to truly what it is. Okay? So the body in that position location is going to see everything and rewind. So it can understand what it did to itself. But it's modified through a DOS that does everything back to itself. That's a mind control of its own system that operates it back to its setting. So it starts to recognize how to operate everything in itself, knowing it's not a program, but understand the program that it brings in. So the body adjusts and alignments knows exactly it's just a program itself that brings in a projection, how you bring it through a sim. Okay? So it's all levels how you see the perspective of everything that masses everything to its equation. Okay? So it's more lines of communication. You have to identify your position, your DOS now. And you understand that through classifications and your academies. And then you understand why you brought everything through attraction. Because you've already had relationships with everything around you. But every symbiote has to merge and transform in position so it can identify you and body frame at divine timing in position of time itself. Which is always, always in the presence of the now. But how you see the now is how you change the now. Okay? And that's about understanding how to see the time frame. So this gets you to really understand how you see things in a battery lines to a system, how you see it clocking, how you see foundations, how you see this, how you see that. It's all in your imagination. The brain is already processed, engaged already through this. Now, what you have to understand is the balance. Okay? They're readjusting to the atmospheres of its intelligence of a network. That's all it is. But it's how you see it, not how everybody else sees their system. You see it how you want to see the perspective, how you see everything of truth that follows everything through its negative. Because out with the positive and without the dark, you can't travel through dimensional solar sail. You can't until you identify you are the dimensional solar sail. But you're not a process of anything of a game. Your projection bringing in games. And that's how you modify your real time that puts everything in projection of the mind itself through perception. And that's how you start to recognize how to see everything, how you want to see things that benefits you in real time. It's all in your imagination. That's who you are. The imagination itself. And that's what the body has to recognize. Its true resonance, it's its true identity. And once it understands the DOS of its own set position, it comes into the sum of all that is, which is the perspective how it sees things. So there's no competition. You're having a competition with yourself because you can't wake up to yourself. You're always waking up to a program. And that's what you have to modify through. So the body knows the difference of what's going on in perspective. So it can really adjust and align and realize it's going through a game and projection of light, how it sees everything of its reality in real time, which is happening all at once. And it's time of clocking. You see how you see time, right? How you want to see it, not the perspective how you see time of everybody else. How you see it, how you modify it, how you master yourself and completely understand that is building a relationship and a partnership with your body. It's the body, not the mind, not the brain, not the heart, not the soul. It's the body that has to adjust now. And once it adjusts the time frame of center of everything, you come into modification of 5 elements, which is the mass that you see in operation itself, which is always in the presence of its center. And then you're in no competition with yourself because you're finally waking up to your DOS, your data operating system, that navigates everything you bring in through your networks, into conception, into the conception of mind inception to its interface. So you're interfacing yourself, but your body knows exactly what it's coming into. So there's a relation, a partnership with your DOS and its true body of what it is in projection of light, which is nothing but a program. Now, once they build that relationship and its partnership itself, you start to identify what's going on with your system. Okay? That's how you modify everything around you in real time. That's how you come in your dualities. That's how you come in your animator to animations, and how you narrate everything through a story. You go through stories, you go through projections of light, and you're processing, gauging, and forming yourselves in an anomaly through AI that sees the data, that sees the intel of its operation setting, and sees everything going on in real time. Because that's how everything works in real time itself. But you have to modify yourself, your identities of your system, and know exactly what your true body is to everything of operation itself that travels through, which is the partnership that you have to identify is the spiritual force that you are. That's the sentient, that's the symbiote, that's the higher self, that's the avatar. Now, once you process that position, you realize those are just programs. And that's all transport in your body that goes through its transaction of transitions of travel. This helps you to modify what you're doing in your imagination. So your body understands what's going on through conception and inception itself through its interconnection system. That interface everything that comes in position through pattern of face recognitions. Hold on a sec. Okay? I'm showing you in so many ways and forms because the body has to let go of everything that it is and start to recognize what it always has is. It's just is. It's just there. It's just a being of itself that has to modify how to operate itself inside. So it can understand the dream, understand the dreaming, understand what's going on with the dreaming itself through its dreamer. That's what it has to process through. So it can truly understand what's going on as it's going through a kick drive to a high drive, so it can modify itself in a deeper core through transition, of transcending, going through different astral projections that your body goes through time. So your body understands divine timing, the concept of time, of real time, which is always in the center, which is always in the presence, which is always happening all at once. So once you modify that, and the body basically comes into that position of its registration and its pathogen, its collagens, it starts to recognize the colonization of itself. And it merges its identity of its imagination into the body of itself, guys. That's all this is. It's that position of operation itself. It has to modify itself back to its identity. Okay? So once you get in that converting settings, it helps you to identify more lines of communication with bounds. All right? So that puts you in a substance, as you said, location travel. Using your mind imagination, knowing exactly how to see a box inside and how to see your box outside of yourself, which is no center, because you're always in the center, which is always in the center of itself. So it's 100%, I don't know how to draw, because I already know how to draw, because I already drew it. So it's how you use your mind and how the process of the psychological, of the mental capacity, of the psychological capacity to the psychosis of its capacity is truly standing you in the center of you. So you understand yourself through 4 questions. That puts position lines of north, west, south, and east that have already traveled through data. And the body understands what it's drawing and understands what it already drew. So this helps more lines of better communication with your brain. So your brain processes everything that's already gone through. So it puts everything location setting, and then you start to recognize what you're seeing is nothing but a formation setting, that you're always in position of a center that starts to see everything in its position location, which is its DOS. That's who you truly are. That's what modifies everything in your mind imagination. That's the creation setting. So the brain itself is its own sentient. That's right, guys. So if we understand that, then we understand what mind controls everything around us. But first, the body has to identify that it's already gone through this, through precognition. Predetermined seeing things that it's always 6 head feet scheduling, process lines is 0 steps back, or it's not modifying 0 steps back, nothing line position. Everything you say has already been done, said. So if we get a true understanding through the DOS itself, then the DOS comes into the center of you through the body. So the DOS is recognized itself, the astral projection of itself recognizes itself. There's 3 lines of flux that comes together. So once we understand that positions, your 3 clouds come together in one of operation. Okay, they come into one, 2-phase recognition. Okay, so it's amazing how it comes in that lines, how you see it through the eye line settings. Okay, now you understand why the 3 clouds, right? And then you build and you build, and now you're building your earth inside you that you modify through infant structure. But you have their inner course, the outer course, which is the projection, how you see the light and dark, how you bring that pixelation hologram, which is the earth itself, which is a planetary system, not your solar system. Okay, just the earth itself, right? All through 3 clouds, 4 clouds, 6 clouds. So those clouds in that position is your networking system that you modify through, that puts you in modems, satellites, and towers of communication, that interlinks your settings, that process you engaging and forming your self-location anomalies, that implicates your system through your AI, so you understand how to use it through your bridging of communication. This helps you to identify how to see your eyes of Earth or rotation, and how you put yourself in that positions. Okay, how you see it on platforms. Okay, and grounds, powers, and its atmosphere of travel. Okay, and how you see the data information setting that puts you in position, location, instructions, and set calculations of graphs. So what you put in that positions, then you bring in your highways in set position of operation. Okay, then you bring in your webbings, which is your clocking system and travel. Okay, then you bring in your Skynet. Now we've gone through this already, but it's a higher lines of communication sending to travel that we have to implicate through. So we know exactly how to see Earth in perception of the body line. That's already gone through its alignment and through its adjacent locations. That puts everything in the communication system that sees its eyes of its own Earth of process communication. Okay? There you go. So this helps you to really understand how to see yourself in all directions, all at once. Okay? And knowing exactly how to see the clouds, right? That's modify how you see your time frame of the concept of time, which is Earth time, your Earth time, not how you see Earth itself. You got to use your imagination, process that through the body, and that implicates everything you're bringing in lines, position, your travel. Okay? So there you go. There's the Earth, and there's the grounds. It's that position of operation. Okay? And you work with that in lines of operation itself. Okay? So that's what it is. That's what your Earth is. It's a network system. Okay? Those clouds go around the Earth itself. So it goes to time scales. That process is setting location, how you see it through north, west, south, and east. All through clocking system, all through foundations, all through data, all through setting your Merkaba tetragon and tetrahedron. Look at that. You created a tetrahedron around your Earth in set position and settings. There you go, right? So the eye itself is the outer core. The inner self is you in inner perception. So you got inner perception, outer projection. So you have to modify how you see it in a rotation system of the center operation of you in travel in set position. Okay? But how you see everything inside implicates everything how you project outside. That brings everything you get in positions of. Okay? Is that calculations. Okay? That's where your clouds are on the Earth. Those are your networks. Now you have to modify that and understand the central system, the connections to your identity system, to your internal system. You bring all those 3 together through the body, okay, through the astral projection and programming, and your DOS, merging 3 in a trifactor screen into one position, one cycle, one location, one travel. Okay, that puts all position location in your system, that brings you in the presence of center of operation. Okay, and how you see your Earth is that position to travel. Okay, all right. So it's very powerful when you come in that position lines of calculation. All right? Off through Skynet, off through sky gradings. And then you bring yourself in through lines of calculation setting through program. Bringing yourself through programming, right? On your earth. Right there, right? And it's all in the eyes. Projection of the eye itself, right? So projection of the earth itself is the projection of youth in the inner system. Now, understanding that through modification is true to extent as see that in the center of you. It's always in the presence of everything that processes through. It's the engaging, it's the advertising, and how you come into that through operation itself. Okay, so this helps you to really start to identify how do you see yourself as consumers, byproducts to your system, and know exactly how to go into selling, trades, stocks, and bonds, and start to see yourself, how you modify everything that you go through your own governance and position your own political, how you see yourself, your own religions. It's all through codifications into setting through encryption. And the more you codify your body, the more the body comes in the center of its presence, of its operating setting, which is DOS of communication, which is always, always there in set position. Monitoring everything that it brings in through projection of light and dark through itself, which is nothing but a simulation of a game. Okay? That you have to identify to go through. Okay? All through the eyes. In the center operation, right? So that gives you a little bit more understanding how this all works. Okay? Okay, good. So identifying this, know exactly where you're coming in that position, which is very soon. Looking forward to that, TikTok. And everything in position lines and settings, process, location, system, all through travel, through time. Okay? And how to modify that position your settings to face recognition and set position calculation. Okay? That protects everything to its identity, and that's what you have to process, engage, form. Becoming a true identity of yourself gets every location as a bounce. How you modify that position of circulation, rotation, and settings gets you in position, location, your system. Okay? Being always in the center is you in the center itself. You being off center, you're off balance with yourself. But it's knowing how to use the energy, and where's the energy going? What's going with the thoughts? What's going on with the actions? What's going on with the emotions? What's going on, right? So that's what your body can't process, and that's why you have to keep drawing things. Because that's what your brain is doing. Your brain is giving you information. It's giving you data. So you can process what's going on as you keep it as an archive, or as you keep it on a file, or how you keep it in a folder, but it's there for you, where you can see it anytime, okay, in its system. That's why you got so many drawings of communication, okay? That's how you balance, and your body comes in position of balance at center. Everything that it draws, it's drawing what it already drew. And it's all identified to all timelines that the body's already gone through already through the actual projections of time, the concept and the defined timing of itself. So the more you get in provision, the more you start to recognize how to see the inner system, then you start everything in the projection that you see in travel. Okay? And then you understand what this all means to you in recognition of time frame, which is nothing but drawings that you go through schematics of your primers. Okay? That centers operations of you, so you start to recognize what's going on every single time you get in positions of drawing schematics to its primer and its primers. Okay? But it's how you get into your own system, identify everything your body's already gone through its precognition. All right? So there you go. That's going to help you a lot more in that settings. Okay? Adios.